Okay, at this stop, we've asked an industry representative to join us. He's Zach Fore. Zach is an area agronomist with Pioneer. He's originally from Minnesota. He got his master's degree at NDSU, and prior to his job with Pioneer, he's worked for the University of Minnesota Extension as well as industry. So we've gave Zach quite a challenge with little time. But what I've asked him to do is maybe give a very brief recap of corn production in this part of the country, just some of the challenges that people had, and then most importantly talk a little bit about, well, anticipating some of the challenges you might have from today until harvest time. And I asked him to consider, well, some management strategies to help people. You know, we anticipate maybe we're going to have less than mature corn. Maybe we'll have some corn that's going to be dropping cobs. Maybe we'll have less than desirable stock strength.
We sent around a handout there that gives you a little bit of a background on what's gone on this year. Greg did a little bit of an update on the GTU situation so far. And so right now we're you got a handout there from NDON. If any of you don't use NDON, it's very, very easy to use, a really neat website, and you can really quickly get comfortable with pulling up your GTUs, putting in your own planting dates, and looking that up for your locations, as well as rainfall and other environmental conditions. So there's some real good information there from NDON. The top one is the current GTUs. I've been using from May 15th on because we didn't get a lot of May 1 planting, so it's May 15th on. The map that's below that is the departure from normal. That's a 30-year normal, and so as Greg indicated earlier, we're really close to our 30-year normal rainfall or normal GTU accumulation. Our planting dates were a little bit late, so we lost some there, but right now we're pretty close to that long-term normal. Obviously the bigger issue has been rainfall, and the rainfall has been short, so you've got the rainfall map there from Carrington, and rainfall varies a lot from mile to mile at times, and so your rainfall certainly may be different than what's observed here. But that's really been the situation, has been late planting under relatively difficult soil conditions in a lot of cases, and then low rainfall, particularly from about July 1 on. And obviously that's a stressful situation for our corn. Greg mentioned also that we're looking at development issues. How mature are we going to get? Are we going to get to maturity? The table that's next there gives you a little bit of an indication of how long it takes to get from one stage to another if you're monitoring your corn, and also the number of GTUs. And so we've got days in there and we've got GTUs in there. Are those the same thing? They're not. Which one is it? Can't be both, right? Got to be one or the other, doesn't it? Well, in reality it is a little bit of both. So corn does respond a little bit to day length, but it's primarily heat. And so when you have the days there, the days are really a guesstimate as to how long it will take us to get those GTUs. And so if we get more heat, we'll get to maturity faster, regardless of how long it takes, okay? If we don't get heat, we can have 2-3 weeks and we may not get there. So we need the temperatures to get to maturity. As with soybeans, Hans mentioned we need to get our soybeans to maturity before frost. We need to get our corn to maturity before frost too. And that's maturity in corn is black layer. That's about 30% kernel moisture, and once we get to that black layer, all the dry matter accumulation has occurred, and it's just a dry down from 30% until that point. So when our frost dates are listed there, so typically in this region, it's about the 20th of September that we get a 32-degree frost. That's what the weather station weather data at Carrington shows. And so that's a lighter frost. To get a 28-degree frost, it's more like toward the end of September. Okay, so what's the difference between a killing frost and a light frost? How much difference is that going to make to the plant? Okay, so on the left hand there's a table that shows if you have a killing frost or if you have a light frost that kills the leaves only, how much yield loss that you're going to get at different stages. Okay, so that's a little bit of an indication of what would happen if you don't get to maturity. Now in this part of the world, we don't always get as much heat as we need, and we don't always get to black layer, and it's just a reality of growing corn here that sometimes we don't quite get there. So if we don't get there, that doesn't mean that we don't have any crop at all. If we get close, if we get to fully dented, we're at somewhere in that 90 to 95% of yield potential, and then it's really a dry down war from that point on. do we get it dried fast enough? And so I want to talk a little bit about dry down too. If you look at this page with the yellow graph on it, the yellow line graph, okay, that shows dry down. They did some work at Purdue to develop a formula for how much heat does it take to dry corn down, and the formula on the top shows you about what that is, and then that graph, yellow graph, shows you the points of moisture per day you lose at different air temperatures. So you'll see that at 85 degrees, if we get a high of 85 degrees, we can lose a point of moisture a day. And if we're more like 60 degrees, we're getting about a half a point a day. And so if we get to maturity earlier in September, then we have a better chance of getting more heat in September, and that's going to dry us down. And so it all works together. Late maturity, not only do we have a challenge getting it to maturity, but we have a challenge getting it dried down to harvest moisture. If you look at Carrington specifically, the weather data collected right here in Carrington, it shows that the average temperature for the first week of September is 61.1, second week 57, 53, 52. Then we get into October, it's 47, 44, 42, 37. The average temperature obviously getting cooler, and our dry down rate is getting slower. If you look at the dry down rate on that bottom graph there, the green bar shows the average points per day of moisture that you're going to dry down, and then the purple bar is the total for that week. So for the first week of September, we can, if we get to black layer, this first week of September, we can dry down 3.5 points of moisture. And so for the total month of September, typically we're looking at being able to dry down about 12 points of moisture. We get into October and it's a battle. In October, we're only going to lose about 4 points of moisture. And so all of that backs up to planting dates and maturity selection. Planting early enough and picking hybrids that are going to get to maturity at the time that you want them to, so that you can get corn that's as dry as you need it to be. If we look at these late season issues and what are the things that we need to be thinking about, certainly one of them, anytime we have a dry environment, we put a lot of stress on that plant. And so what happens is cannibalization of the stock material, and we can get stock integrity issues when we have a dry season. We have plants under stress. And so that's something that you need to be aware of and you need to be monitoring. And it helps if a hybrid has a good stock rating, but it might not prevent that from becoming a problem when you have an environment like this. So it's physical inspection. Go out, do the push test, push them over, lean on them, crimp them, see if they're going to stand or not. Give them a good push. And if those stalks start to get really weak, then you need to be thinking about getting out and getting that harvested early. Also like to encourage people, this year maybe we won't have that issue. Last year it was dry and people had 20% corn out there. And they said, well, I've got lots of time yet, I can wait till it gets down to 20, 15% moisture and harvest it at that time. Nothing good can happen while your corn stands out in the field. The only thing that can happen is you can lose it. There's various ways you can lose it. You can lose it to stalk lodging, you can lose it to eardrop, you can lose it to harvest, to shattering in the header. So there are those kinds of losses. Greg mentioned eardrop. Eardrop isn't year in and year out much of a concern, but when you get in a really dry environment and you get a lot of stress in that plant, not only does it stress stalks, but it stresses ear shanks also, and we can get some eardrop. And that's another thing to watch for. And you can go out and you can shake those plants, give them a little bit of a shake when you're getting close to harvest and see what kind of ear integrity. You can also pinch them, get in that husk area and pinch them and see how well they're hanging onto that shank. Because that can be an issue also, and that might cause you to speed up harvest on certain fields or certain parts of fields. And the most stressed parts of the fields are the most susceptible. So if you look at the lighter soil types that you've got, if you look at those that are near tree rows, things like that. Those are the kind of the big things right now to watch for. I think the other things that we need to be managing as we go through harvest and Greg said late season issues and finish and that sort of thing is residue management and tillage. In recent years we've had a lot of information, a lot of effort put on the planting operation, and that operation has really improved a lot. The meters are better, the monitors are better, the openers are better, the trash whippers are better. There's been a lot of emphasis, a lot of good tools, and I think we're doing a better job and have the equipment and the ability to do a better job of the planting operation. I think the next thing that we need to expand to is the tillage and the residue management part of the operation. And so whatever your follow crop is, residue management on corn is going to be important. We've had improvements there also with these headers, the shredder headers that do a really good job of residue management. It can be a big deal in corn and whatever crops you're going to follow with. And so that's important. Also tillage. Tilling in some of that residue, having uniform depth of tillage. I think what we're going to see is the kind of emphasis we've had on the planting operation. We're going to start to see that kind of emphasis on the tillage and the pre-plant preparation operations too. And if we pay more attention to those, we're going to be more successful in getting that good uniform stand. So you'll probably hear some about stand establishment later, but what we're looking for is perfect spacing, uniform spacing, and every plant coming up at the same time. Okay, we want them all coming up at the same time. If it gets one leaf behind, you get a runt and you get a little ear on that plant. And so having uniform, even emergence, good spacing is critical. And I guess maybe emphasize maturity as you look at harvest this year. If you've got some comparisons out there, don't forget about them. I don't know how many times we have people that have a strip plot or they split or they put some nitrogen on and they forget where they did it or whatever. If you did anything, measure it. And as you're going through the harvest season, take notes on product performance. How's it performing here? How's it performing there? So that you can use that information for future reference. Monitor moistures. Not everybody's maturity measurement system is the same in the industry. So what might be called an 82 hybrid might not really be an 82-day hybrid. The key thing is harvest moisture. Are there any questions? A lot of the corn that I've been looking at recently is in the full dent stage. It's either full dent or almost full dent is what I've been seeing. So we've got 250, 300 GDUs to get to black layer on a lot of this stuff. And how many GDUs do we get in Carrington in September? 313. Okay. How many do we get between now and the 20th, the 1st and the 20th, when we might get a frost? About 220. Okay. So we're, if we just got fully dented, we're pushing it for maturity. But again, if we don't quite get there, we've still got, if we get fully dented, we've still got 90-95% of our yield. It's just going to be a dry down battle from then on.